Welcome back to the channel. The last review of 2024 is going to be of a more budget-oriented product, the new ARES HPA drop-in gearbox. The unboxing experience is quite basic. The gearbox comes wrapped in this plastic sleeve, so you can see the contents right away. Everything comes pre-assembled, and it looks like the wiring is already routed to the grip, similar to a Speedsoft style replica. Now, I don't know who would use this gearbox in a Speedsoft scenario, given that it doesn't have an adjustable trigger, but there is the option to route the power wires to the buffer tube, although they end up being quite short. On the topic of wires, it comes from the factory with an XT30 connector. RC enthusiasts will be quite familiar with this connector, but for the Airsoft world, it's quite new. The XT connectors are superior to both DINs and Tamiya connectors. It's just weird seeing ARES make the jump straight from Tamiya to XT. Considering the cable length and that all the 3S batteries I have are wired to DINs, I will extend this cable and wire it to DINs for easier use. Towards the front, we can see a plastic nozzle, the right length for the ARES lineup of replicas. Behind this nozzle, we can see the front of the engine coupled to a manifold clearly labeled in and out for the air route. This part is different than other engines on the market now that use Mach solenoids, having the cheaper solenoid in the back. Using a cheaper solenoid enables ARES to offer this gearbox at a much lower price compared to the competition, around 140 euros. The fire control unit seems very similar to a standard ARES EDU, having the same magnetic fire selector, a physical safety, and sadly a non-adjustable trigger. It would have been nice to see an adjustable trigger, given the year of the Lord 2024 this was released in, but I guess at this price point we cannot complain. On the same fire control unit we have a very bright red LED, which I'm not sure why it's present here, apart from giving away your position in a very dark environment. Nevertheless, it can be covered with electrical tape, and that's an easy fix. On the gearbox itself, we can see clearly engraved that the minimum operating pressure of this engine is 4 bar, or 60 psi, a unit more commonly used in the HPA scene. Also, we have here indicated the max operating pressure of 12 bar, or close to 170 psi, which is much more than all the other electrical HPA engines on the market claim to withstand. The required power to run the electronics is 11.1 volts, or a standard 3S Airsoft battery, again pointing to a different solenoid valve, as the standard Mach uses 7.4 volts, or a 2S battery. Last, the included IGL terminates with a standard US Foster connector, which is a good thing considering most of the HPA market runs on the US standard. It would have been nice to see an O-ring installed here to prevent the IGL from disconnecting when you attach your HPA hose, but that would have also made it annoying for users to remove the O-ring to pull the IGL through a pistol grip base. I want to talk a little bit more about the solenoid valve present in this setup. Considering it's a more budget version, we don't have the nice options and adjustments that more expensive engines offer. For example, the fire rate is fixed at 16 bbs per second. You can argue that this is an okay fire rate, but again, in 2024, where most AEGs achieve over 20, it would have been nice to see it go at least that. Second thing you don't get is dwell and pause adjustment. These are fixed from the factory and tied to the fire rate. This means you won't be able to adjust how much air volume is delivered, so regardless of your barrel length, you get what ARES set this engine to. If I had to guess, by feel, it's tailored more towards a 300mm barrel if I compare it to other setups I have. First shots out of this engine came with some amount of grease shooting out of the nozzle, so I advise you to shoot 200 to 300 shots before assembling the replica to prevent grease from getting to your hop-up backing. I tested the power output of this engine with various barrel lengths I had on hand. All of these were 6.03mm inner diameter, and all the BBs used for the testing were BLS 0.25 grams. For a 125mm barrel, at 100 psi we got 0.85 joules, at 130 psi we got 1.05 joules, and at 150 psi we got 1.2 joules. For a 160mm barrel, at 100 psi we got 1 joule, at 130 psi we got 1.25 joules, and at 150 psi we got 1.4 joules. For a 300mm barrel, at 100 psi we got 1.25 joules, At 130 psi we got 1.65 joules, and at 150 psi we got 1.85 joules. As you can see, the increase is quite linear with the barrel length. I am pleased to report that the shot-to-shot consistency was very good, without major variations. Using full auto only caused the power to drop a small amount in the realm of 0.05 joule. When attempting to install this gearbox the first time in a rear wired configuration, I ran into an issue with the included wire length being too short. I'm not sure if this is because it was intended to be front wired or have the battery somewhere else other than a buffer tube, like a Honey Badger or ARP style replica, but the XT30 connector was too big to let the retaining nut pass next to it in a buffer tube. The easy solution was to extend these wires and terminate them with the DINS connector for standard Airsoft batteries. You'll probably need to source a different length M5 screw, considering the shape of the rear part and the way the old spring guide screwed in place. The stock screw from your replica may be too short. I tested also the air efficiency of this engine, shooting a combination of semi and full auto. For a 0.4 liter aluminum tank, filled to 3000 psi, I was able to get 900 shots at 100 psi. For a 0.5 liter composite tank, filled to 4500 psi, I was able to get 1500 shots at 100 psi. While these numbers are quite disappointing, we have to consider the price point and the corners that needed to be cut to achieve this price. Also, considering these tests were done shooting magazines one after the other, you will probably get more shots at the same pressure because of the tank cooldown effect. As I know many of you will ask, this HPA gearbox is not compatible with other brands' receivers. ARES made this for their own replicas, and as many of us know, they have a proprietary gearbox and receiver shape. I'm not saying that with enough determination it can't be achieved, but it's not a drop-in for other brands, and there are risks you take when you modifying your own replicas. Another advantage of a gearbox like this is saving weight. Let's bring out the scale again and weigh the standard gearbox and motor. They come in at 695 grams. Now the HPA version weighs only 432 grams, while also getting rid of the motor. So in the end, you save 263 grams from your setup. Yes, I know the tank and the regulator have their own weight, but you carry that somewhere else on your body, not in your hands while running around. Closing this review up, I want to say that I am very glad to see more brands releasing HPA products. Competition is always good in the market, and that is an advantage for the end user. As always, if you like this video, consider leaving a like, and why not subscribe for more reviews and gameplay. See you in 2025!